wanted the prophecy. This is your prophecy. The man who pulled Thor from stone. Behold, you're born king.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Hey everyone, welcome to Garbage In, Garbage Out. I'm your host, Kelton, and back in the, well, I mean, it's not a garage because I'm not on PDG. What do we have here? Back in the recording studio, Grift, how's it going, sir?
It's good. I mean, you could make a case for it being a garage because, you know, that's sometimes where you store the trash. I don't like, you know, the garbage.
That's true. Right? Yeah, back in the recording bin, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm back from my mission in the Balkans. Upon return, I got my second shot, which I'm currently recovering from. Arm's a little sore, but, you know, could be worse.
It's no coincidence, by the way, that you miss a week, and then all of the sudden, tensions in the Middle East have risen considerably. So let people draw parallel lines however they want from there.
You know, they said that a major European war, the only way it was going to break out was through some damn incident in the Balkans. And we're going to leave it up to you to draw the lines on, you know, what I could have been doing and how it may have sparked this conflict. But, you know, there's the whole geopolitical scene. I've seen some good threads about how what's actually going on is power, big power geopolitical matchup, relations between like U.S., Russia, Turkey, all those big boys. So, there's a lot of shit posting going on. It's cathartic to be dealing with the situation with humor, which is really all we have. We're powerless individuals online shit posting support for Palestine.
Yep.
I'm trying to do a little bit with the new merch collection I put out. I'm sure I'll be able to plug that later.
Oh yeah. Of course. I mean, you know, it is weird to think that, like, the last time we spoke, Al Jazeera had a office in Palestine, and now they don't.
Yeah, the AP did as well.
Normal world that we live in, right?
Yeah.
It's okay. Thank God we can talk about important things like, I don't know, the 2017 King Arthur movie. Something real hot off the presses on the tip of everyone's tongue.
Yeah, I mean, this is 2 hours of my life I'm never going to get back, so I'm very interested in at least having a cathartic interrogation of what went wrong with this just utterly derivative piece of media.
Yeah, and I know, by the way, for our listeners here, we were planning on covering Jupiter's legacy, but I'm trying to figure out the best way to put this diplomatically. If it didn't blow donkey dicks, I would be interested in covering it, but it does, and so I don't want to. When the new trailer for The Green Knight, A24's latest film, has me so fucking hype and wants me to get back into the world of King Arthur lore.
Hell yeah. I loved King Arthur lore as a kid, you know, like I remember some really, really well-written and illustrated books, like were some of my favorite on the bookshelf as a kid. And I saw the 2004, the Clive Owen King Arthur movie, which was sort of like a revisionist take on it. I remember enjoying it when I was younger. I feel like I'm definitely due for a rewatch because it definitely, like, as far as the originality and execution of the premise, just in a completely other league from this piece of shit.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, the 2004 Clive Owen movie might be bad, but it's probably bad in its own way, or it might be kind of cheesy in its own way, or a little too dude bro. Who knows? Again, it's been a while since I've seen it. But it was definitely something that they had their own singular vision and their own kind of world that they were trying to set up, and they fulfilled on it. So if you like the vision, great. If you didn't like the vision, oh well. But it was a completed work. And so I think that's what has helped it age much better than this movie. Because, I mean, it somehow feels like this movie is older than the 2004 movie.
Oh, yeah. And just one little tidbit I remember about the 2004 movie. The studio got in a little bit of hot water with the press because they made Keira Knightley's boobs bigger on the poster. I don't know if you remember that, but they photoshopped them pretty obviously. Like, you could probably Google it and look up the side-by-side comparisons because it's pretty funny. I mean, she already looks great. There's no need to do that, but I guess for the multiplex audiences who weren't planning on seeing it, and just that little bit of extra cleavage would go the distance for getting their butts in the seats.
They photoshopped her the way that like an 8th grade girl photoshops herself, looking at like prom photos or something, or
Instagram shit. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say Sadie Hawkins dance, but then I realized that makes me sound like someone from the 30s. So never mind. It's wild. The shit you could get away with in 2004.
Yeah, man, we should have known this woke culture. That was a canary in a coal mine. The fact they got in trouble for that.
Look at what they took from you.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was the movie gate to the later Gamergate. 10 years preceding it.
Man, well, I feel like we could probably end up talking about the better movie ad nauseum. So let's kind of just throw out some basic thoughts on this 2017 work, this piece of art, piece of culture. What did you think about it?
Like I said, completely derivative. I believe this came out in 2017, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So that was definitely at a high point of the sort of Game of Thrones presence in the culture. So everybody,
oh my God, it was.
Yeah. So just combined with what they're clearly were trying to do, set up some sort of like King Arthur MCU.
Yeah.
With like Zack Snyder aesthetics and Guy Ritchie, taking elements of his non-linear montage style that they would just chop in there like it was a completely different movie. So this just felt like 3 different derivative movies all in one. Very muddled, confusing experience. The rules of the fantasy world were not well laid out. I want these 2 hours of my life back.
Guy Ritchie is such a fascinating director to me because it seems like people still give him this element of almost indie cred for his earlier works, when it really seems like he's kind of been swallowed by the studio system. Like, this is the guy who nowadays is directing the Sherlock Holmes movies, this King Arthur movie, and Aladdin for Disney. Like, these are not indie films in any way, shape, or form.
Oh shit, I forgot that he did the live action Aladdin that just completely forgettable. I think that him getting absorbed into the studio beast started with the Sherlock Holmes films, which I actually enjoyed the first one of those.
Yeah,
I remember.
And then I can't remember the second one for the life of me.
Yeah, it was about someone was trying to start World War I 15 years before World War I actually started.
Well, I'm glad we finally beat him there. We were able to get another 15 years worth of lethal weaponry out in the open.
15 more years of military buildup and none of the fundamental alliance structures that would lead to global calamity changed at all.
What a ridiculous movie. He is a British guy though, so like if you're a Brit and you get offered the idea of doing Sherlock Holmes and King Arthur, you're probably going to say yes. Like I can't fault him for saying yes to the projects and accepting like the $30 million or whatever.
Yeah, he's definitely, you can tell he gravitates towards English related American movie studio projects. And part of the confusion about just the rules of this fantasy world that is in this movie and just the setting itself is like they clearly reference it as it's supposed to be England, but it's completely divorced from any sort of historical context and the at times ridiculously over the top fantasy elements just take it out of reality completely. So you're left like wondering like what exactly is going on here? What were they going for?
And it's also, it probably should be stated at some point that King Arthur is known as King of the Britons, not King of England, because Arthur existed before these Angles and the Saxons came over. So, little weird that they were kind of doing this 5th century king, but also like a 16th century fashion statements, and the armor structure and all of that was almost Renaissance era. It was truly bizarre to try and place it exactly and pinpoint what was happening. But then, when I look and I see like, well, who produced this movie? It's one of the guys who did Dark Tower and Seventh Son, and Steve Mnuchin was one of them even.
Oh my God, yeah, it definitely had the Mnuchin sheen to it for sure.
Just a quality producer all the way around. I mean, it just seemed like, and again, we'll dive into it a little later, but like the whole movie smelled of this studio produced, factory made, really trying to make a franchise that would become the money printer that Warner Brothers wanted.
I think you said that they wanted to make 6 of these movies. Is that right?
They did. Yeah. Can't imagine exactly 6 of them, but I can imagine 3 of them because, like you said earlier, like this seems like 3 different movies basically that they smashed into one.
Yeah, and considering they didn't include a lot of the lore elements of the of the King Arthur universe, which
they had to save time somewhere, Grift. Come on. They cut out the lore element of King Arthur.
You just have so much to work with. Like, there are so many incredible King Arthur stories that haven't made it to the big screen yet. And that's why part of the reason why people are excited for The Green Knight, because it looks like it's a famous, relatively well-known myth in that canon, which is clearly being adapted in a stylish and ambitious way. So you have so much to work with, so many legendary characters, so much stuff that has penchants with an audience to begin with. Like they know these are identifiable characters, which is what if you're trying to build like a cinematic universe, which is the move for studios nowadays for their long-term budget plans, you have a lot of in the canon to work with, but they completely left it all out. They just name dropped some roundtable knights at the end, and obviously you have King Arthur, and Bedivere is another well-known character, but it was just not. They really blew it as far as what sort of the story they focused on, and the fact that I think the villain in this isn't even in the Arthurian legend. I did not remember him being a character ever at all.
Yeah, he kind of is like this C tier King Arthur legend, because Vortigern, whatever, however you want to pronounce his name, Jude Law's character in this movie, he in most of King Arthur's lore is viewed as like a nephew of King Arthur or like an illegitimate son of King Arthur, and they're like, well, he's an uncle this time around, so sure, fuck it, why not?
And that was also what was supposed to be the Mordred character, who is inexplicably sort of in the intro to this, even though
first 3 minutes and then just gets murked.
Yeah, he's just some mage guy, when in the actual Arthurian legend he's King Arthur's bastard son, and there's all these interesting weird psychosexual dynamics going on with him and Morgan Le Fay and Arthur. There's definitely a lot more going on than just like, oh, Mordred is this evil magician who's defeated at the beginning of the movie.
I guess, to give people an idea, we're not going to do a full plot rundown here because this movie, God, it would erode my soul. But to give people like a basic premise idea here, after the murder of his father, King Uther, who's played by Eric Bana, Arthur's power-hungry uncle Vortigern, played by Jude Law, seizes control of the crown. Now, robbed of his birthright, Arthur, who's played by Charlie Hunnam from Sons of Anarchy, grows up the hard way and in the back alleys of the city, not knowing who he truly is. When fate leads him to pull the Excalibur sword from the stone, Arthur embraces his true destiny to become the legendary fighter and leader. That's kind of like, it's a sword and stone movie. Everyone kind of knows the basic plot beats of it. So thankfully, that allows Grift and I the ability to just kind of rip really into the aesthetic choices and the other things that exist in this movie.
Yeah, I would like, it just felt the plot could have been not a King Arthur movie. They just slapped that name on it, when really, besides the Sword and the Stone and a couple other, the Lady of the Lake and a couple other well-known characters who show up, there isn't really much connecting this to the original Arthurian legend. And the tone, there are fantasy elements of the legend, but it isn't quite as high, ridiculous fantasy as this.
Correct.
In the intro, you're just immediately in the opening sort of. It felt like a prequel movie in itself. That opening
you
scene.
can say it felt like a Lord of the Rings movie.
It did,
like,
yeah.
That's what the first 5 minutes were, of giant elephants invading Camelot.
Yeah, I did like that burning pyramid on top of the elephant. That was a cool little touch. But yeah, it was like, wait, is this Return of the King here?
Hell yeah. We should watch that instead. Hold on, let me pause it, watch that and come back. What did I miss? This movie, it should kind of almost feel directionless, because when I was looking up the writers of this, it was a Pandora's box type situation, Grift, because like all the credited writers on this movie aren't actually really writers by trade. They're producers first and foremost. So they're like, big idea, they might pitch some of the skeletal beats, but in terms of actual dialogue and making compelling characters, didn't seem like there was a lot of experience there. And add to that there's just this huge backlog of an issue of where after the 2004 King Arthur movie came out, Warner Brothers wanted to try and make like an Excalibur remake. And this is kind of where the process got started, because Warner Brothers thought, well, we'll get Bryan Singer to direct our Excalibur remake. And then I don't know what went on with Bryan Singer around like 2009 or something, but weirdly he wasn't considered a hot ticket item for that. So that initial project ended up getting scrapped, and that was actually going to have Kit Harington, who is Jon Snow from Game of Thrones, and then Joel Kinnaman, who has been Rick Flag and RoboCop. They were going to be Arthur and Lancelot, respectively. And so that got scrapped and redone. And then the guy who made that, or who wrote rather, that awful 2018 Robin Hood movie, did you see that with the Kingsman kid?
No, but honestly, like in my sort of headspace, that often would get confused with this movie, because I remember,
it should.
Yeah, I didn't see either of them initially, but I remember seeing ads for them, and they came out back to back years. It's completely rolled together in my mind. Just obvious, studio grabs trying to build a universe around these well-known myths that didn't get sequels.
Yeah, but that was going to have Colin Farrell and Gary Oldman. Colin Farrell is Arthur, Gary Oldman is Merlin. And so, but that's at least like an interesting casting of sorts. And then finally, the script got revised by the guy who produced the Fantastic Beasts movies.
Oh, of course.
That was the thing where I was like, that explains what's wrong with it. The guy who produced the Seventh Son failed movie, and the guy who executive producer the Fantastic Beasts, of course they're responsible for this King Arthur franchise. Fuck this movie. God.
Yeah, this was a bad script. Like, not a single line of memorable dialogue or acting choices, but it also employed that classic Guy Ritchie touch of the sort of non-linear time, like montage, where a character is explaining something that happened to another character, but then they cut between them showing the sequential events in the past with him telling the story. Which in movies like Snatch, that have actually good scripts, it's an incredibly effective plot device, incredibly engaging. Like, and that's sort of Guy Ritchie's like signature style, and you just see it completely bastardized and thrown in with just the utter dreck that was here. I got kind of pumped when I saw that they were doing it a couple times, but then immediately I was like, oh no, it's not up to the standard of what we expect from that stylistic choice.
I actually have a theory about that, because another thing when I was doing some research into this movie, the first draft, the first cut of this movie was 3.5 hours long.
Holy shit.
Based on that, I have a feeling the studio said, no, that's not going to work. How about you Guy Ritchie-fy XYZ set pieces and scenes, and then they became the conversation pieces with the smash cut to the other respective scenes. I have a feeling that that's probably an explanation for why we suddenly got all of those exposition drop with the smash cuts. Like, beyond it being just his style, I mean.
Yeah, that sounds extremely plausible because, yeah, like you said, it felt like a bunch of movies mashed into one. The tone was very jarring. It jumped around between different elements, and once you were getting comfortable with a style, it sort of flipped to another one. Because there was one point where it sort of turned into a underground resistance movie when they were doing sort of stochastic acts of terror against the king, and I was vibing with that. They were actually thinking, the characters were thinking out loud about, they're like, oh, we need to, like, okay, how do we geopolitically disrupt the kingdom? And then they were doing acts of terror, and it was, I feel like there was a good movie in there if they had focused on like King Arthur and his band as this like outlaw group of rebels who were rallying the populace.
King Arthur and his merry men, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you could have made a Robin Hood movie at the same time. And considering this came out in 2017, which everyone was at the full height of their Trump derangement syndrome, there were some incredibly heavy-handed scenes of the Vortigern king making all these subjects kneel and then do the Nazi salute.
But the fingers are separated, so it's different.
It's different. So they were clearly trying to position him as some sort of Trump figure, and then Arthur was leading this underground resistance. But and at the end, the people did rebel, but it felt completely not earned because you didn't really see him gain this following as this legendary figure with the people, besides just pulling the sword out of the stone. There wasn't really any, it didn't build up to it at all.
Absolutely. Because it really feels like Charlie Hunnam is in one movie and Jude Law is in an entirely other one. Because Charlie Hunnam is in the Guy Ritchie set in kind of the Dark Ages era of like, oh, he's a scrapper, he's a fighter, he's this Conor McGregor bobbing and weaving and running through the market streets of Londinium, right? And Jude Law is in like his like heavy metal Dungeons and Dragons inspired King Arthur movie where it's all high fantasy and there are fucking sea witches and all that kind of shit. And like, it's not out of place to picture there being like a giant dragon or some like wolf creature of mystical nature in there with him. It's just two very different vibes going throughout the entire film.
Yeah, I feel like they should have taken, like, as cool as the elephant things, were, and the giant snake at the end, I feel like it would have been, like, tonally wise, you should have taken those things out because it just, it turned into a Lord of the Rings, like, Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Well, it also raised at least for me, that opening scene about the world of the mages, it opened the door to a lot of options that just never got fulfilled later on in the movie. The mages have this like weird ability where they can control both elements and animals at the same time, and so they're basically X-Men, only they're at war with this Dark Ages style technology, and somehow they lost, even though they can control, as evidenced later in the movie, giant kaiju sized animals. Like, how in the fuck did they lose? That just seems wild to me.
The rules of the universe were never really explained, and I'm at a loss here.
Imagine like if you're in the Dark Ages, Griff, like you have a life expectancy of like 28 or whatever, right? So you're already considered an old man among your tribe, and then you're lining up on the battlefield for your tribal leader, and then you're about to face off against the mages who have a giant like 80-foot elephant and 500-foot long snakes, and like that's what you're supposed to fight.
And you're getting hyped up and like charging them and firing arrows as if it actually matters. Like, wouldn't you just take one look at that thing and just get the fuck out of there? Like, there's nothing you can do. And fuck, man, I don't even like. So I do like when movies don't hit you over the head with exposition. They show, don't tell. But
Correct.
like they did way too much showing without a lot of telling right out the gate, and it was so jarring.
Well, and that's the difference, though, between a good movie and a bad movie. Because a good movie will show and not tell because that's what's intended. A bad movie will show and not tell because the telling part got edited out of the movie.
Yeah.
And they're just hoping that you're willing to go along for the ride. And that just wasn't the case with this.
The exposition behind the rules of the fantasy universe ended up on the cutting room floor of that 3.5-hour movie.
For sure. Because I think like if WB wanted it to be a 6-movie franchise, you could have easily done the first movie, have it be like a $40 million budget, and have it be all about King Uther and Merlin taking on like all of the evil mages that exist on the Isle of Britain. Like that's your movie. And if people like it, then great, you can do a sequel, and you can maybe even tease like King Arthur being in the Moses basket that he gets floated down in this movie. You know, like you can still do that, but you make that one movie and it's relatively low cost. And if people dig that world that you've created and the vibe, then you can add more Game of Thrones actors and more Lord of the Rings special effects in the sequel. Like there's a way in which you can do that, and then you kind of culminate and you build up from there. Because then, you know, you can hit the ground running with Legends of the Sword, and then have the third movie be called like Knights of the Round Table, and have that be where it's like King Arthur is the one waging war on actual Camelot because he survived that what is it called? The Darklands, the exposition island where we're like supposed to think like, oh, he's gonna suffer more than any man has suffered. It will break his will, and we get like a 4-minute montage of him fighting giant bats, basically.
Yeah, that whole sequence just completely went right through me. It didn't leave much behind. And
it was
like
so bad. Man.
Yeah, and I really like your idea there of having the first one be a sort of scrappy fantasy magic themed one, and then you could do the Underground Resistance movie, which was the actual effective part of this movie, and then
exactly,
and then do your establishment round table knights dealing with threats to the realm. But
they're never going to do that. That would take patience and faith in the project.
No,
and Warner Brothers cares way too much about like quarterly earnings reports to make that happen.
You would think that would be an advantage for like streaming studios, like they could.
Let's not give them ideas, Grift. Come on now. we don't need to have people go like, actually, hey, that Guy Ritchie King Arthur movie as a mini series. Now that would be cool. Release the Ritchie cut. Okay.
Yeah, the budget for this thing was $175 million.
The operating budget.
The operating
Grift.
budget, not
I have
marketing,
to clarify because the marketing was $135 million.
Jesus
the
Christ.
The total cost of this movie was $310 million.
Oh my God! And then it made less than $40 million in the United States.
Yeah.
Worldwide total of 146.2 looks like. So yeah, this lost them a lot of money.
Yeah, because when people say like, oh, well, is that how much it grossed? That is in fact how much it grossed in total, meaning you still need to take out the cuts that the theater chains actually get from that total, which is roughly 20 to 30% depending on domestic versus foreign markets. So good fucking luck with that. Cost them so much money.
And it's always funny when a movie that's trying to set up a franchise bombs, because especially particularly when it's bad. When it's good, you're like, oh damn, I wish we'd gotten the sequels, because that they're never going to get. But when it bombs, you sort of laugh at it. But also, it's kind of gross when you think about just the inequality in our society and the way resources are allocated, and then just the amount of money that is put into these completely derivative media products it's criminal when compared to like what that money could be actually going to in bettering people's lives. And just particularly when they lose a lot of money, it's particularly evident. It's just like these creations are just like are just the perfect tokens of our society's excess and monstrosity. Like they're just perfectly
you have people who
encapsulated.
freak out because like they lost like $10 on Dogecoin or whatever. Imagine if you cost the studio $150 million, and then you still have the ego to go, but yeah, I'll direct an Aladdin after this. I feel good about myself.
Yeah, crypto's been crashing a bit today, so I've been refreshing my Binance account as a form of self-harm. But yeah, like if this would be like if obviously when prices are down, good time to buy, but when it's the studio logic, they're always going to buy. They're always going to double down. And like it's interesting how they try to set up these franchises with and refuse to fund more independent, more interesting products because they think that that's going to be beneficial to their bottom line. When in reality, you got to just invest in quality projects. Like that's going to make you. I'm sure the Green Knight is going to turn a much bigger profit than obviously this movie lost a ton of money, but when you actually like try to have a vision and trust that your audience is going to vibe with it, that usually pays off for you instead of just mashing a bunch of things together, getting a supposedly indie director who's been completely co-opted by the studio system to be your big name on the poster. And then just do the barest cliff notes of his aesthetics that you allow into it.
It really is frustrating to see because you look at what could have even been on a competent version of this movie. And I hate to bring it all kind of on Charlie Hunnam because like no one actor deserves blame, but I think it's very symbolic of just the lack of real vision here, because we have to go back to the world of like 2014, 2015. Okay. And you have three actors that are vying for control or vying for this role. Right. The first one is Jai Courtney, who, he's been on some bad movies, so I can understand wanting to stay away from him, but he's a finalist. Then you have Charlie Hunnam, who's been on Sons of Anarchy and has said that he's obsessed with the movie, so that's great. And then you have Henry Cavill, a.k.a. the guy who played Superman, a.k.a. the guy who was in Guy Ritchie's Man from U.N.C.L.E., a.k.a. the guy who was in The Witcher and made that such the cultural phenomenon that it was because of his portrayal of whatever the fuck his name is, Gerald of Rivia or whatever. And the executives went with, that Charlie Hunnam guy. Yeah, we'll take him. He's how old? He's 37? Well, we'll have him play a 21-year-old in this movie. It's fine.
Yeah, it's like when all the older actors try to play high schoolers. It just looks out of place.
They kept calling him boy the entire movie.
It's like, no, this is a ripped-ass Viking-looking dude. Like,
yeah, he also looks way too Viking to be King Arthur. I'm sorry. Like, when he's fighting the Vikings, it's just, really? Y'all are fighting each other because you're different people groups, huh? Okay, well, I don't believe that for a second, but that's fine.
And like
okay.
One of the basic like archetypal tropes of the King Arthur story is that when King Arthur initially starts off, he doesn't know who he is. He's pulling the sword from the stone. He's like a wimpy dude. He doesn't know how to fight. He hasn't been trained. He's not a badass out the gate. He has to learn along the way, and that's like
exactly.
that's part of why his character, I think has like resonated with audiences across millennia. Like that's.
But why would you do that, Grift, when instead you could have him do a shadow boxing montage? Huh? Doesn't that sound better than character arc?
Yeah, it felt very Mortal Kombat at the beginning, actually.
That's an insult to Mortal Kombat, unfortunately.
Because this movie also had that the PG-13 sheen to the action, where you.
Oh my God! Yes.
Where just like when you're gonna have people having sword fights and there's no blood and guts and people are just getting fucked up all over the place. It just takes you right out of it. You like if this had been like a hard R, like actually like blood and guts Conan's style like fantasy shit, like that would have improved it a lot. Like that would have actually had an edge to it and a sense of danger to it. But instead, you just had the PG-13 style action where mass amounts of people just get fucked up and there's no blood, no actual bodily consequences to anything.
It's like bizarre, almost sterile sense of violence that took place.
Yeah, it was very much like fucking up stormtroopers. The guys with the black masks, like his
Yep.
yeah, like they're obviously supposed to be intimidating, and the even though he kicks their ass, they still have good they still have intricate fight choreography, but
yeah, they're supposed to not be the Immortals from 300, just to give people the idea of who they are.
But yeah, they just fuck up so many of them, and they just they do the classic PG-13 sword action where like he stabs one of them, and then they immediately go off screen. Just they're thrown off screen by like what would actually like slice them in half.
Yeah. Thank God though. I mean, like Vortigern might be an evil ruler, but he just has such a sense of style. He was able to equip all of his minions with all black outfits, which in the 5th century Britain, man, that would probably be hard to come by.
Yeah, they went like full like dark fantasy mage king with the aesthetics of his henchmen and the throne room and the stuff that he wore. It was very like high Middle Ages, but it definitely like a time period well after the Arthurian legend's supposed to take place, and it didn't have that grittiness that.
No, it didn't.
Yeah,
it really felt like a D&D campaign almost. Like that seemed to be the kind of movie that Jude Law was doing, only he wouldn't be allowed to be as cartoonishly villainous as I think it might be enjoyable for a D&D kind of movie. It just felt like the reins got pulled back a little bit on this for no apparent reason.
Yeah, his performance as the villain was pretty muted, and part of where he was getting his power from was he was like sacrificing his relatives to this like underwater like tentacle siren beasts.
Yeah, he was fucking running out of relatives real fast.
Yeah, he's killing his wife, he's killing his daughter, but he
killed his brother.
Yeah,
let's not forget.
Oh yeah, they just made it seem like he was conflicted about doing that, but his whole performance, his villainy, his whatever supposed qualms he had about what he was doing, it was a very flat Jude Law performance.
The thing I also love the most is in the flashback, it's middle-aged King Uther and his slightly younger brother.
Yeah.
Right? And then suddenly King Arthur has all grown up and is finally fighting Jude Law. The age difference between Charlie Hunnam and Jude Law is only 8 years.
Huh. Yeah.
It would have been interesting almost if, I don't know, Arthur had a older brother for some reason. And that could have been what happened. And then that froze him in time. But, whatever. We're making the movie better, I guess, if we try to explain it instead of keep on ragging on it as it deserves.
Yeah, I feel like that's a recurring trope for our recordings. Like we end up like writing better movies, like conceiving of better movies than they actually put out. And so I think studios, if you're interested in improving your garbage pop culture products, listen to this show.
Let's focus on the movie that we have at hand. The third act of this film, or rather the solo fight of when finally Vortigern and King Arthur are fighting each other. And they go into another dimension, aka the PS2 cutscene dimension, I think.
And then they had Charlie Hunnam fight Darkseid as or Steppenwolf or whoever. Like,
it was really bad.
It was a Thor movie by then.
It really was. Like right down to you have a magic steel tool of some kind that can harness lightning, and he fights like Wonder Woman that came out like 2 weeks later, weirdly enough. And it just, the slow-mo shots and the cool aesthetics that were given to him, when it's happening in live action, that's one thing. But when it becomes so painfully CGI in the climax, that really made the whole thing age like milk. And just made me fucking laugh out loud for trying to take this movie seriously.
It's just that combination of both oversaturated color, sparks flying everywhere for no reason.
Yeah.
And then the parts that are dark are too dark, so you can barely even see them if your room lighting isn't perfectly attuned to your monitor output, you know?
One thing that did kind of crack me up about this movie, it's not me giving credit to it so much as when Arthur finally beats his uncle, he also thanks his uncle for making him the man he is today. And that was like some real hefty baggage that needs to probably get unpacked in therapy for King Arthur there. Because that does not seem like a healthy attitude to view your uncle in that respect.
Yeah, men will literally overthrow the ruler of a kingdom rather than go to therapy.
It just, it seems weird because all of the beats occur in just the most muted, muddled of ways that all kind of look like it's all studio notes everywhere all the way through. And so when King Arthur finally wins, he takes over Camelot, and then he's like building his giant ass round table. That scene, and then you were touching on it earlier when he's like, "Oh, hey, Greg or whatever the fuck, Blue." I don't know any of their names, but he's just like Wet Stick, I think is one of his names. Like, I now call you Sir Tristan.
Yeah.
It's just like, what? Come on,
Dipstick. Your name is now is now Sir Tristram or whatever. Like, it was just like these
Chinese George. Your name is now just George.
Yeah. Yeah, it felt they name dropped a lot of famous round table knights, like Percival, Tristram, Bedivere, all, and then George. But it just felt like that's not even a guy in the myth. It was just like they called him Chinese George earlier in the
entire movie, except for the very end,
which is fucking weird, because when studios go out of their way to put like a black character or an Asian character in a thing that's supposed to take place in like either 5th or 15th century England. Like, obviously our conceptions of race are different than they used to be. England used to be a Roman Empire outpost. There were probably some people from other parts of the world that ended up there. And there is a historical precedent for having not just all white people in England, but to directly like reference like this guy is called Chinese George. Like it was weird, like, because obviously you're doing something different than what they did in the past, where every one of these people in these movies would be white, but you don't call attention to it at the same time. It's like
exactly. You do what you did with Bedivere, and like he was never explained, and I appreciated that. It's like, all right, cool, he's here. And he's doing this thing. Awesome. Wonderful. We don't need Chinese George running around in his gladiator school where him and just a whole bunch of other hunky himbo dudes wrestle it out, I guess, all day, every day.
Obviously these are token diversity additions by the studio, but I don't mind it. Just have the Asian guy. Don't comment on the fact that he's Asian, and it's what they did with Bedivere here. It's like, I was perfectly fine with having a black guy play that role, but just don't call attention to it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, so halfway kudos to them for like 2 characters, but you lost me with the third, so no credit taken. It's 100% or it's nothing, at least in my opinion. I mean, this movie just was not very good for me. It could have been worse in a lot of ways, like the Guy Ritchie isms, as just sad as they made me to kind of see like, oh, this is the bastardized version of what I come to love as an aesthetic, but to now see it twisted and muted in this way wasn't cool. I could have not gotten it at all, and that would have been worse.
Yeah, because the glimpses of it that we did get just made me want to watch Snatch. Like, I'm like, why am I wasting my time with this bastardized, like, just inferior reference to these stylistic, production devices that are just employed by better films.
Do you think someone's watching this and going like, man, I really got to watch Sherlock Holmes 2, Game of Shadows?
It's a better use of your time than this movie, that's for sure. At least you get Moriarty. At least you get like the World War I before World War I. It's grounded in an actual time period that makes sense. It's a more coherent fantasy MCU Sherlock Holmes world. Better than this piece of shit.
Can't hate it for that. Not at all. So yeah, I guess let's talk about like how many trash cans we want to give this thing. Where are you at, Grift?
I'm at 3 or 3.5, somewhere in that range. It was technically, it was competent in the action scenes. It wasn't embarrassing. It wasn't like a so bad it's good. It wasn't like a obviously it wasn't so bad it's good, and it also wasn't like a so bad that it's bad. But just it completely slid through my mind after it, and nothing left purchase. Like it was completely forgettable, completely derivative. It has no reason to exist.
I would also probably give it 3 trash cans in general. It's a very, technically competent movie. I think, as you were talking about, one of the people who was behind the camera, the cinematographer for this movie, is a guy named John Matheson. I wanted to mention it now because he did the cinematography for Gladiator, The Phantom of the Opera, and then also like 5 of the goddamn Marvel movies.
Of course.
So
yeah.
That I think is a good element of what made it just so forgettable. Like it's perfectly serviceable, but it's also something that you'd never think of. No one ever goes, man, the cinematography in Gladiator or in the Marvel movies or in Phantom of the Opera or in, XYZ, any other film that then he's worked on before. So it's just too bloated, too boring, not memorable. And man, can't wait for us to cover something fun next week instead.
Oh, hell yeah. Basically, that genre of post that we like to dunk on where it's like MCU stands posting just the most CGI PS2 cut screen still from the Avengers Endgame saying, oh my God, Marvel cinematography is out of this world. Basically, it was like that derived even several levels further from any amount of originality. It was
my God.
Yeah.
It's so bad. I always feel so bad for the special effects team on Marvel movies. These teams of 20, 30 or 40 people who've slaved away and crunched away for 16 hours a day every day for a year and a half, right? And then the cinematographer is the one who gets credit shared by all the fans.
Yeah, and then they're just all like, oh my God, these landscapes of gray and brown smoke and debris is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in a film. It's just one perfect shot. Am I right?
r/movie details upvote all the way through. God damn.
Some gold for you, stranger.
I guess if it's a King Arthur movie, we could say some Grail for you, King Screen.
Hey,
whatever.
Hey.
Okay, it's time to get out of here. So let's go into plugs. Grift, you're actually doing important stuff though. So tell me what's going on in your world and how can people help?
You may have been seeing a lot of Iron Dome posts coming out of the Grift shop. So I put the idea out there that I would do a shirt inspired by them. The response was overwhelming. So I had to do that up. And of course, all profits are going to be donated to fund emergency medical supplies for Palestine and the ongoing genocide that they're dealing with.
Yep.
So the way to check that out on my store is I either go to the pop-up shop on the grift.shop landing page or search Dome at my site. All the profits are going to be sent to I think it's Arab Relief Canada, which is the one that's doing direct support for Palestine through emergency medical supplies. I wanted to pick one that wasn't through like the UN or some other shady nonprofit that just ends up like back in the DNC's coffers. So so I looked at some threads and picked one that's good. We've already raised a bit, but obviously there's no limit to what we can help out, and it's really the only way that we can, but besides posting, obviously it's tough to feel powerless as just a person watching from the other side of the world.
Definitely.
And so we're all dealing with it in our own ways, and trying to use humor and shit posting to support a good cause. And that's the Grift Shop motto: putting those shit posts on shirts. And this one's not going to me. It's going to Palestine. So definitely check that out.
Hell yeah. I mean, again, doing actual real world good in some way. I'm incredibly jealous, and it makes me following up with also you guys should also follow us on Letterboxd and Twitter. That would be cool.
Extremely important too. These things are of equal importance.
Equally. That's exactly right. Well, again, it's so very cool that you're doing that. Obviously, thank you a whole lot. And then for anyone else out there still listening to this during plugs, follow the podcast at Gigo Podcast to see what we got coming up next. If I remember correctly, we are going to be doing Army of the Dead, the Zack Snyder zombie movie, with Apocalypse in review.
Oh my God, I'm so excited for that.
Just a real palate cleanser, because as always, it's a blast, and we will catch y'all on the flip side.
Peace.
Deuces.